Continuing in chapter 12.2, okay, now we're talking about the sum. If you want to find the sum of the series, so in other words, if I want to add the numbers in the sequence, okay, this is the formula that we're going to use when it's arithmetic. So first thing you need to know what is the first term. So you need to know T1. T1 is the first term. You have to know that. You also need to know the last number in the sequence. And you need to know how many numbers we have altogether. If a question has a sigma, do you know what the Greek letter sigma looks like? Looks like an E, kind of like. This is the symbol for sum. Okay? So when you see that, that's what a sigma looks like. The bottom of the sigma tells you where you're going to start. So it'll tell you what term you're going to start with. And the top is the end. And in front of it is my general rule. Okay, so that is how you're going to read it when you see a sigma. So let's look at question number 1. Notice question number 1, you have your sigma. Now, this represents where I'm starting. So this means I'm going to start off with T1, and then I'm going to end with T9. Okay. And then in between, how many numbers? So if I go from 1 to 9, how many numbers would that be? N would be how many numbers? From 1 to 9, how many numbers? If I write the numbers 1 through 9, how many numbers did I write? 9. Not a trick question, y'all. I promise you. Not a trick question. All right, so what we're going to find first is T1. Now, this is my general rule. Okay, so we're just going to substitute into that general rule 1 and 9. So in order to find T1, we're going to take 3 times 1 minus 2. See what you get. And then you have to find the last term, which in this example is the 9th term. So that would be 3 times 9 minus 2. So go ahead and find those two numbers. So find your T1 and find your T9. So when you substitute in 1, what do you get? What's 3 times 1 minus 2? What's 3 times 1 minus 2? 1. Who got 1? So that means T1 is 1. That's my first term. And then my last term is T9. What's 3 times 9 minus 2? 25. All right, so to find the sum, it's going to be the sum of these 9 terms would be 9 over 2. Multiply that by the first number plus the last number. So go ahead, type that in your calculator to find the sum. All right, who got 117? That's your answer. All right, go ahead and do number 2 by yourself. All righty, pretty good. Couple minor mistakes along the way, but you should get 432. So how do you know how high to go? So the last one said go up to 9. But for this one, at the top of the sigma, it says go all the way up to 12. So the number at the bottom and the top can be different. So because it tells us to go up to 12, we have to find our first number and the 12th number. And altogether there are 12 numbers. So it's n over 2, and then it's the first number multiplied by the first number, and in this example, it's the 12th number. So the final answer would be 432. Any questions? Pretty straightforward. All right, let's keep moving. So now we got to find the sum of the first 46 terms. Now remember, so if I'm trying to find the sum, this is the key word. I need to know the first number, which we know is 2. But I also need to know T46. And how many numbers do we have? We have 46. So the first thing I need to do to find T46, let's go back to yesterday. I need to write a general rule. Remember, in order to write a general rule for an arithmetic sequence, T sub n equals the first number plus the common difference times n minus 1. So, what is my first term? 2. Now, don't say it out loud, but try to figure out what the common difference is. I went from 2 to -1, from -1 to to negative 4, from negative 4 to negative 3. So the numbers are getting smaller, which tells me my common difference is the negative. So what is my common difference? Negative 3. So it's 2 minus 3, parentheses, and minus 1. So you have to write this rule so you can figure out what T46 is. Okay, because we don't know T46. They only gave us T1, T2, T3, T4. So you have to write a rule to figure out what is T46. So T46, that means that N is 46. That would be 2 minus 3 times 46 minus 1. So go ahead and find T46. So this is a two-step question. We got to go back, use what we learned yesterday in order to answer for the sum. All right, who got negative 133? All right, so now I have all the pieces of information I need. I have T1, I have T46, and I have N. So to find the sum is equal to N over 2, and in this case, it's going to be T1 plus T42. So we got the sum equals 46 over 2. Multiply that by the sum of the first number plus the last number. Go ahead and see what you get. So on your quiz next week, when it's a sum question, you may still have to find the general rule in order to do the sum. So I got negative 3,013. Who got that? That would be my final answer. Wait, what'd you say? It is. Thank you. It's 46 numbers, not 6 numbers. The sum of 46 numbers. Thank you so much. Okay. We good? All right, we're going to do 3 and most of 4 and finish 4 tomorrow because that's as far as I got second period. And I don't want you all to be far ahead from my other 3 classes. All right, so let's look at number 3. You really don't have to. That first sentence, I'm going to change it for next year because you all probably don't know what Agile Mind is. That's a book we used to use a long time ago, but that's irrelevant. All right, so we have an auditorium. And in this auditorium, in the design, the first row, which is called row A, has 15 seats. So that tells me that T1, because that's the first row, that's 15. And then it says that each of the rows behind row A is labeled alphabetically B, C, D. And it has 5 more seats. So what's the difference? What am I adding? 5. So that would be my common difference. So let's write our general rule. The general rule would be, now if you write this on the test, because there is going to be somebody who writes that, that is not full credit. I want you to plug in the numbers, right? So we figured out that T1, we have to actually put those numbers in. So T1 would be 15 and D is 5. All right, so now we got to use that rule for part B to figure out how many seats are in row 18? I'm just gonna ask this question. I had a student who knew this just right off the dome. Does anybody know the 18th letter of the alphabet? I literally had a student say, oh, it's R. I was like, how do you know that? Like, she just knew that the 18th letter is R. I thought that was interesting. But anyway, so the 18th row, which would be row R, how many seats? So that means that N is 18. So we have to use the rule that we wrote for part A. This is why it's important that you know how to write a rule, because we're going to use that rule for part B. So you're going to find the 18th row, that would be 15 plus 5 parentheses, and then we got the 18 minus 1. Go ahead and type that in. All right, anybody else get 100 seats? Who got that? All right, now let's look at part C. Part C is asking us to find the total. Another word for total is sum. The sum of rows A through F. So in order to do this, I need to know how many seats are in row A, but I also need to figure out how many seats are in row F. So we know row A is 15. What letter of the alphabet is F? A, B, C, D, E, F. So if I'm looking for the F row, that means I'm looking for T6. All right, so we need to find T6. Using the rule that we wrote for part A, let's find T6. So that would be 15 plus 5. And then 6 minus 1. Go ahead and see what you get. We got 40. All right, so from row A to F, that means that N is 6 because there's 6 rows. So to find the sum of these 6 rows will equal 6 over 2 multiplied by row A, which is 15, plus row F. All right, go ahead and see what you get. Yes. All right, so it says from row A to F. So if you count in the alphabet from A to F, F will be what letter in the alphabet? It's the 6th number. All right, who got 165 seats? Questions about it? What we thinking so far? Nothing crazy? All right, so we're going to start the next one, but we're going to do parts A, B, C, but not D. So let's go ahead and look at this last question. So now we have a concert hall. In this concert hall, the first row has 25 seats. So that would be my T1. Each row after the first only has one more seat. So that means that my common difference is 1. And altogether, there are 32 rows. All right. Now, we don't use that 32 for part A. For part A, we're only using our first term and our common difference. So let's go ahead and write our rule. T sub n is 25 plus the common difference, n minus 1. That's my rule. what two things do I need to know to answer part B? I need to know how many seats are in the first row. And then I also need to know how many seats are in the last row, right? How do I figure out how many seats are in the last row? What number do I substitute into my 32, right? Because the last row is the 32nd row. So we need to figure out what is T32 using what you wrote for part A. So that would be 25 plus 1, and then we got 32 minus 1. Go ahead and see what you get. I think it's 56. 56, okay. And then how many rows do we have in this auditorium? What would N equal? 32. All right, so the sum of the 32 rows will be 32 over 2. Multiply that by the first number plus the last row. And go ahead and type that in. All right, who got 1,296? All right, so we're going to end there. If I were you, I would use this time to start working on your homework. Remember, this first homework is due on Thursday, and I'm not pushing that back. So it's out of the book. I got a couple books up there. I'm going to go ahead and put those homework pages up really quickly. All right, so take a moment, grab a book. You can, and the ones we haven't covered, you can just skip it for now, right? But you should be